Dear diarrhea. Diary full of shit. Just play along, me, myself, and I. No one else. So I'm so legit. I ain't got nothing to say, so I figured I'd say some shit. I've been meaning to say this for like the last 3 weeks. Before I was fired, because my boss, knew I was looking for another job. Like I said, I didn't ask him. I didn't really want to put him on the spot. It's just one of those kind of awkward moments. But I wasn't doing anything wrong. I didn't screw up. I was doing the job just fine. It's just, and the fact that he said, he'd put in a good word and I'm in good standing and whatnot. Give it some time or whatever. Maybe if I get more experience, I could come back and circumnavigate the cone. Because that's what he said. He's all, if you get more experience, give me a call, blah, 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 so, whatever. But, that's what I think, because like I said, we didn't get a lunch, or breaks or any time, where you could make, take care of personal business, I mean, that's kind of it's hard to do that, so I would have to get permission. Hey, boss, I need to go make some phone calls. And I did that like 3 or 4 times. And then twice, I actually said, can I come in late tomorrow? So it's blatantly obvious that I'm looking for another job, So that's that. But I was taking a tinkle break in the outhouse, porta potty, and I hear this boom, and I thought maybe a tire blew, on a vehicle or one of the loader or something, and I walked out and kind of looked around and didn't really see anything, and then went back in and went pee-pee. And then as it turns out, one of the dudes threw a big rock at it, and I guess that's something that they do every now and then, just sort of fucking around. But and he said one guy, he came up, and slammed his bucket on the ground, and scared him, and like 3 spiders came crawling out, from the little cracks and stuff, and this, that, and the other. Which is why, once a week I would spray that Raid spider spray. I'd keep it, I'd bring it in the house with me. I wouldn't leave it there or leave it in the car because it freezes. But yeah, I would spray, all the corners and crevices and, kind of up in the toilet paper holder, and I'd open the lid and kind of spray a bunch in there, like spray bomb it, and kind of hold it upside down and spray underneath, the seat there. You have to spray it only go halfway because you're holding it kind of upside down. It stopped spraying, so you'd have to hold it upright again and let it re-pressurize and then spray it. And then, I had those wipes, and I'd wipe underneath, I'd put my hand kind of in there under the seat, and then in the middle, the top, and the outside. I'd use one sheet for that, and then throw it kind of off to the side. Number one, so it doesn't pile up, in the middle, so it keeps it more cleaner. I'd do that with the toilet paper too, kind of throw it to the side, so it doesn't get that mountain of shit, so you're trying to keep it smelling decent. Because once you get that mountain of shit and it's out of that blue stuff, then there you go. And secondly, I don't want the dudes to see that, because the people who clean it, because, you're probably not supposed to use those wipes, but I would use them, in combination. I have a meticulous, because I've been using public restrooms, for a long time, and, I have my cleanup method, and you're only as clean as the last dirty thing you touch, so you got to be careful, where you set shit and stuff like that. wipe that down. You know, carry spray with you, or the wipes. I mean, those aren't super, duper, super duper, high power clean stuff. But they're better than nothing. But I had my system. I had a little like 4 ounce, spray bottle. Um, but um, but you gotta be careful using that stuff on your hands because it soaks into your skin and the capillaries in your skin, and now it's in your bloodstream. And if you're spraying your hands several times a day, well, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, you're loading up your body with particulates. So you need to be mindful of that. Do keep in mind that your immune system is pretty robust and it needs to be, tested, so to speak, exercised, so to speak. If you live in a super clean, sterile environment, your immune system is weak because it's not fighting shit off. So just kind of be, conservative with that stuff. If you have to touch a doorknob or something, give your hand a quick, or use because I diluted it, it was that 70% shit, but it's like, well, shit, because I didn't want it to be so rough on my hands. But like I said, it's like, well, what's the point if you dilute it? Well, I'm still getting some, benefit, like I said, keep my immune system robust. But, because people are filthy animals. They don't wash their hands, after touching their dick or their, wiping their ass. Some people don't even wipe their ass. So, I mean, my cleanup procedure is pretty basic. It's meticulous. I use the toilet paper in combination with the wipes. If I'm home, I can reach the faucet. But anyway. But I take those fiber pills, with like I take like supplements and stuff, So yeah, my not to give too much information here, but anyway, but that was that. Yes, I spray that shit, and then they have the little like gel stuff, and so rather than use the wipes, waste my stuff, use their stuff. It works better, but squirt it on a little piece of toilet paper and then throw it to the side, because I lift the seat up, because I need room to maneuver, because I reach in from the front, so to do my cleanup duty, so, and I need to kind of do whatever, so that's that. I lift like both seats up, so again, not to give too much information here, but and I hate using porta potties, but that's all we had out there, so. And like I said, usually I would, I prefer to shit at home, but sometimes it's like not enough time goes by between the time you ate dinner and morning, so I always would attempt to take a shit, but I might have to take another shit, mid-morning or something, because like I said, I eat once a day, but your body, processes food as fast as it does, so sometimes you don't really have to go in the morning, so anyway, too much information, too much TMI. What else is I gonna say? Oh yeah, we would have these safety meetings on Friday, and everybody would just sort of, they'd discuss the topic, then everybody would just sort of, grab ass and talk and fuck around, and, which is fine. You're on the clock, you're getting paid for that. But this one guy was talking about, he drove one of the haul trucks, which is basically like a heavy duty dump truck that bends in the middle. It's like an off-road. It's just got like the cab is like right in the middle. It's got two seats in there, but the back seat is like behind the front seat. And I guess he drove through a barricade one time, and he had brought it up. Blah blah blah. One time I drove over it. I still don't know how I did it. And another guy was like, you didn't drive over it, you drove through it. And, you know, I wasn't going to say anything, obviously, but it's like, I know how you managed to do it. You were fucking around on your phone. And you busted right through it. You know? So it's like, I'm surprised he would even mention that, because it's like, do you think we're all idiots? Actually, y'all probably are. So, like I said, you know, there's different types of men, you know, and some men are just grown up boys. I mean, in general, and I'm a grown up boy, in general, most human beings are about age 12. And my feature best Cool Breeze has stated this before too. And I agree with him. The average like mentality of your adult human, male or female, is about 12 years old, plus or minus. You know, you've got some people who are younger, some people who are a little older, maybe 16 or 18 years old. You know, even if you're, you know, in your 30s, your mentality is basically that of an 18-year-old. You know, on the mature side of things. And you do have some people who are straight up adults. But the problem is those adults tend to lose touch, you know, with like everything. So, you know, they don't really understand their kids, you know, or, you know, these people are usually pretty higher caliber people, you know. So like I said, you know, I've talked about bosses before, about how they are cut above you, whether you like them or not, whether they're pricks or not. They do have better work ethic than you, you know, they organize better than you, and they're probably smarter than you. Now, IQ is overrated. It's only as good as the, you know, person who possesses it. Sense is golden. But if you're a boss, you've probably got a fairly decent, you know, IQ, and hopefully you've got the sense to go with it. So, because I've had bosses who are pretty smart, but clearly didn't have much sense. But they, you know, so they like I said, they tend to kind of lose touch, you know, with stuff. Anyway, that's all I had to say. Bye bye. Yeah. Have a good day. Um, and I figured I'd post that, you know, because I have no life and whatever, and I'm a YouTuber. Like I said, I do it for the glory. I keep doing it for the honor and the respect and the admiration.